The silence of the winter arc is a physical thing. It's not an absence of sound, but a presence, a heavy, waiting stillness that presses against the eardrums. Out here, 100 miles from the nearest speck of human life, the cold doesn't just bite, it devours. My name is Dr. Eris Thorne, and my team of 4 was here to study the ice. We found something else, something that had been sleeping in the deep freeze. It began with the core samples. We were drilling into the Svartisen Glacier, a monstrous river of ancient ice nestled in the heart of the Arc's influence. The drill bit, designed to slice through millennia of compacted snow, shrieked as it hit something hard, not bedrock. Something else. When we pulled up the core tube, the ice inside wasn't clear or blue-white. It was streaked with crimson. Fine, thread-like veins of a deep, rust-red color ran through it, pulsing sluggishly in the lab's sterile light. "Contamination," muttered Shaw, our geologist, but his voice lacked conviction. The substance was warm to the touch, and under the microscope, it didn't look like any mineral or algae we could identify. It writhed. Petra, our biologist, isolated a sample. "It's organic," she said, her face pale. "The cellular structure is... I've never seen anything like it. It's like a hybrid of plant and animal tissue, frozen in a state of suspended animation." That night, the first generator failed. Not a mechanical fault. The fuel lines were clogged with a dark fibrous sludge that smelled of copper and decay. We wrote it off as bad fuel, a fluke. We were fools. The second night, the silence broke. It started as a low hum, a vibration that came up through the ice and into the bones of our prefab habitat. Then came the whispers. They were just on the edge of hearing, like the wind whistling through a crack, but the wind had died hours ago. They were voices, but not any language we knew. They were the sound of sap freezing in a tree, of continents grinding together, ancient and utterly alien. We huddled in the common area, the 4 of us, listening. Cross, our security lead and medic, gripped his rifle like a talisman. "It's the wind," he insisted, his knuckles white. "It's just the damn wind." But it wasn't. The next morning, Shaw was gone. His bunk was empty, his sleeping bag ripped to shreds from the inside. The door to the habitat was sealed from the inside. There was no sign of a struggle, except for one thing, a single bloody handprint on the wall next to his bed. The blood wasn't fully red, it was streaked with that same rust-colored ichor from the glacier. Panic, cold and sharp, finally set in. We tried the radio. It was dead, emitting only a low, wet, gurgling sound. The satellite phone showed no signal. We were cut off, trapped in a white desert with something that hummed and whispered and took people from locked rooms. Petra, driven by a scientific fervor that had curdled into obsession, spent every waking hour in the lab with the infected ice core. "It's communicating," she whispered to me one day, her eyes gleaming with a light that wasn't entirely sane. "It's not a contaminant, Eris, it's a neural network. The glacier, it's a single frozen brain." I thought she'd cracked, until I saw the tendrils. It was Cross who spotted them first. Thin, root-like growths of blackened ice creeping up the habitat's support legs from the snow beneath. They were delicate, fractal, and they pulsed with the same slow rhythm as the veins in the core sample. When we tried to break one with an axe, it didn't shatter. It bled. A jet of that rust-red fluid sprayed out, sizzling where it hit the metal, and the tendril retracted with a sound like a dying sigh. The hum grew louder. The whispers became clearer. They weren't speaking to us. They were speaking through us. I'd find myself staring at the wall, my lips moving, forming sounds I didn't understand. Cross started having waking nightmares, screaming about the old growth and the time before the sun. 2 nights after Shaw vanished, the power died for good. The lights flickered and went out, plunging us into a darkness so absolute it felt solid. The electric heaters died, and the cold rushed in, a predatory thing. We lit gas lanterns, their flames dancing wildly though there was no draft. That's when we heard the scratching at the door. Not the wind. This was systematic. A slow, deliberate scraping of something hard and sharp against the reinforced metal. "It's Shaw," Petra murmured, her face pressed to the lab's porthole window. "He's come back." Cross leveled his rifle at the door. "Shaw's dead." "No," Petra said, turning to us. Her smile was a terrifying rictus in the lantern light. "He's just changed. He's part of the whole now. He says it doesn't hurt. He says the cold is love." The door's locking mechanism, a solid steel bolt, began to twist. It wasn't being forced. It was unscrewing itself, turning slowly, deliberately. With a final metallic clunk, it hit the floor. The door swung inward. It wasn't Shaw, not anymore. The thing that stood there was a grotesque sculpture of ice and flesh. Shaw's face was frozen in a silent scream, encased in a translucent shell of hoarfrost, his eyes replaced with gleaming black orbs like obsidian. One of his arms was missing, replaced by a jagged shard of the crimson-streaked ice. The tendrils we'd seen outside had grown over and into him, weaving through his clothes and skin, holding him together. He took a shuddering step forward, the ice of his body cracking and reforming with the movement. Cross didn't hesitate. He fired. The report was deafening in the confined space. The bullet struck the thing's chest, punching a hole through the ice. No blood came out, only a trickle of that dark ichor. It didn't even flinch. It just kept coming. Petra walked towards it, her arms outstretched. "I'm ready," she whispered. "Take me to the silence." The Shaw thing reached for her, its icy fingers brushing her cheek. The moment they made contact, Petra's body seized. A web of frost exploded across her skin, and her eyes filmed over with the same black ice. She didn't scream. She just froze solid, her expression one of ecstatic peace, becoming another statue in the gallery of the damned. Cross fired again and again, the bullets doing nothing but peppering the monster with harmless holes. I grabbed a fire axe from the wall. As the thing turned its blank obsidian gaze towards Cross, I swung with all my strength at the tendrils connecting its leg to the floor. The axe bit deep. The glacier screamed. It wasn't a sound from the thing that was Shaw. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls, the floor, the very air. A high-pitched, shrieking wail of agony and rage that felt like it would shatter my teeth. The Shaw thing staggered, the tendril I'd severed retracting like a wounded snake. "Run!" I screamed at Cross. We burst out of the habitat into the blinding white hell. The wind howled, but it was different now. It was a chorus of those shrieks and whispers. The entire landscape was moving. The snow wasn't flat anymore. It was rippling, forming into shapes, skeletal figures of ice, crawling things with too many limbs, all of them veined with that same bloody crimson. We ran, stumbling through chest-deep drifts. There was nowhere to go. The winter arc was a cage, a headlamp beam cut through the storm behind us. The snowcat, our only chance. We scrambled inside. Cross slammed the door shut, his breath coming in ragged, sobbing gasps. He turned the key. The engine, by some miracle, roared to life. "We have to get to the high ground," he yelled. "Try for a signal." He threw it into gear and we lurched forward, the treads fighting for purchase. I looked back through the rear window. The habitat was being consumed. A forest of black, bleeding tendrils was erupting from the snow, wrapping around the structure, pulling it down into the ice. And leading the horde of ice phantoms that shambled after us was the thing that had been Shaw, its obsidian eyes fixed on our vehicle. We drove for an hour, maybe two. The storm was a solid wall of white. The snowcat's heater fought a losing battle against the cold that seeped in, a cold that carried the faint coppery smell of the thing in the ice. Suddenly, the engine sputtered. A warning light flashed on the dashboard. "Fuel filter blockage." "No," Cross whispered. "No, not now." The engine died. The silence returned, heavier than before. We were adrift in a frozen sea, and the things that lived in the depths were rising. The scratching started on the roof. Light at first, then more insistent. Tap, tap, scrap. Cross looked at me, his face a mask of pure terror. He raised his rifle, pointing it at the roof. A long, sharp spike of crimson ice punched through the metal ceiling right next to his head. Then another, and another, until the roof was peeled back like the lid of a tin can. The storm raged above us, and looking down were a dozen faces, all encased in ice, all with obsidian eyes. I saw Shaw. I saw Petra. I saw other faces I didn't recognize. Previous expeditions, perhaps, all absorbed into the hive mind of the glacier. Cross fired until his rifle was empty. It made no difference. They reached for him. I watched, paralyzed, as the cold took him. It didn't freeze him. It transformed him. The frost crawled over his skin, his screams crystallized in his throat, his eyes turned to shiny black stone. He became still, another perfect frozen soldier in an ancient patient army. Then they turned to me. The Shaw thing leaned down, its frozen face inches from mine. The whisper wasn't in the air this time. It was in my head. "You are a spark in the long night. We remember the first sparks. We will snuff them all. Your warmth is a memory. The cold is forever." It reached out a single crystalline finger. I am writing this now, huddled in the dead snowcat, using the last of the power in my tablet. They are outside, standing in a silent circle, waiting. They don't need to break in. The cold is doing their work for them. I can feel it in my lungs and my heart. My fingers are stiff and blue. The tendrils are already growing across the windshield, blotting out the world. The rescue team will come eventually. They will find this log. Listen to me. You cannot fight it. You cannot reason with it. The Winter Ark is not a place. It is a living entity, a consciousness of absolute zero, and it is waking up. It is so cold. And the whispering, it's starting to make sense. The first thing I noticed when we crossed the last ridge into the Winter Ark was the light, or rather the absence of it. The sky wasn't black, nor was it white. It was a pale, sickly green, like the remnants of auroras no one alive had ever charted. I pressed my gloved hand against the snowcat's windshield and shivered, not entirely from the cold. "Does it always look like this?" Mara asked, her voice tight over the intercom. She was our climatologist, brilliant, meticulous, and far too calm for my liking. "I don't know," I admitted, gripping the steering wheel. Official records stop 20 miles back. Beyond that, it's all satellite imagery. Outdated. The snow beneath the treads crunched like brittle bones, and I realized our radio had gone dead half an hour ago. Not dead in the way a wire snaps, dead like it had never existed. A strange, low vibration hummed through the vehicle, something that shouldn't have been there. Then came the silence. Our snowcat's engine stuttered and died, leaving us in a void that pressed against the ears like icy hands. Mara clutched my arm. "It's unnatural," she whispered. "Listen." I did. The snow wasn't snow anymore. It was a movement, a sound, a presence that whispered in something resembling our language, but not quite. Something knew we were here. Something was watching. We had supplies, barely enough for 2 days. The emergency cache wasn't far, a half-mile through a ridge that disappeared into a curtain of frost and wind. I knew the moment we stepped out, we'd be nothing but 3 fragile bodies in the grip of whatever haunted this place. We bundled up and climbed into the blizzard, tethered together like survivors of a nightmare we hadn't yet dreamed. The snow swirled violently, cutting at our faces. Shapes seemed to form ahead of us, shadows, jagged, wrong, but as soon as we blinked, they dissolved into the white nothing. "Keep moving," I ordered, though my voice sounded alien to my own ears. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time had no meaning here. The snow beneath our boots shifted and groaned as though the ground itself were alive. Between the gusts, voices threaded through the wind, soft, urgent, and alien. Mara froze, eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" I nodded, every instinct screaming at me. Something was moving beneath the ice, something ancient, something that had waited centuries for us to arrive. When we finally reached the cache, half buried in a ridge, we found it empty. No heaters, no rations, nothing but a hollow metal shell. The door was open, swinging slightly as if pushed by a ghost, and then we saw it. Shapes in the ice, thin, elongated, almost human. They shimmered with the green light of the aurora above, their bodies pulsing like frozen veins. Eyes, or eye-like orbs, fixed on us from a distance. I felt Mara trembling beside me. "They're aware," she whispered. "They know we're here." I grabbed my flare gun and fired blindly. The figures scattered, not running, but folding into themselves, slipping beneath the snow as though it were water. And then the whispers returned, louder, urgent, insistent, threading directly into my skull. "Go, go, leave. Your warmth will feed us." My stomach turned. The voices weren't just communicating, they were manipulating. They were alive, and they were patient. Night fell, or what passed for night in this place, a shadowless green haze. The wind died suddenly, leaving a cold so absolute that it seemed to suck the heat from our very bones. That's when I realized the truth. This was no storm. The Winter Ark was a predator, a vast, intelligent frost, an entity that fed on life and heat, and it had been waiting for us to arrive. Mara screamed suddenly. Something had latched onto her parka, a long, thin appendage of ice that coiled like a snake. She struggled, her screams swallowed by the whispering wind. I swung my ice axe blindly, the metal striking nothing but thin air, and then she was gone, pulled beneath the snow as though it had opened a mouth and swallowed her whole. I ran. I don't know how long I ran, minutes, hours, centuries. Shapes pressed against the storm around me, scratching, whispering. I fell into a hollow, a natural ice tunnel, and hid there, shivering and sobbing, listening to the voices. They spoke to me now, directly. You are warmth. You are fragile. We will remember. The hollow tunnel wasn't safe. It began to shrink as if the ice itself were closing in. The walls pulsed with a greenish, sickly glow. I could see faces in the ice, frozen, screaming, eyes black as obsidian, faces of previous victims, previous expeditions, trapped in the memory of the winter ark. Some moved, some twisted in impossible angles, and always, the whispers pressed in. I kept moving, crawling through narrow passages, sometimes sliding, sometimes clawing, always feeling the ice watching. And then I reached a chamber, a cathedral of ice, hollow and vast. Here, the aurora above was brightest, weaving shadows that looked like arms, like the dead reaching. And at the center, a mass of ice, humanoid, shifting, pulsing, watching me. I recognized it immediately. It was not human. It was all the humans the Ark had taken, reshaped, merged into its consciousness. A hive mind of frost and hunger. Its voice didn't travel through the air, it traveled through my head. You are alone. You are heat. You are ours. I fired my flare gun at it. The light hit the ice mass and fractured a corner, but it was laughing, a soundless laughter that made the walls themselves tremble. Then it reached toward me, tendrils of ice stretching, probing, searching for my warmth. I ran, but the ice moved beneath my feet, guiding me, shaping the terrain, forcing me toward it. I stumbled into another corridor. It wasn't natural. It had formed around me, walls bending, ceilings lowering, narrowing. The whispers grew louder. I could hear Mara. I could hear voices of scientists I didn't know, all pleading, all screaming, all warning. And the Ark answered them. Silence, it said. I tried to run, but the passage ended abruptly. Before me was a frozen lake, perfectly clear, perfectly still. And beneath it, shapes twisted and turned, eyes pressed against the ice from below, all black, all hungry. I could hear them calling my name, Elias! Elias! Though I hadn't spoken it aloud. The ice cracked beneath my boots. I ran along the edge, heart hammering, breath frozen in my throat. The lake shuddered as if something beneath it were waking. The entire chamber vibrated. The winter ark was aware of my fear. It was feeding. I found a hatch leading upward, barely visible through the ice. Climbing, I prayed it led to the surface. And it did. Sort of. I emerged into a blizzard brighter than anything I'd ever seen. Snow flying in impossible shapes, spiraling, twisting, forming forms that looked human and not human at the same time. The Ark was alive, watching, learning. I ran again. I can't stop running. The radio, the snowcat, the emergency caches, they're all gone or destroyed. I see flashes in the distance, shapes forming into trees, into walls, into hands reaching, moving closer with every heartbeat. I am Elias Kane, survivor of the Winter Ark, but survival is a lie. The Ark remembers me. It waits, watching. The snow itself moves beneath my feet. The wind carries whispers that feel like fingernails across my brain. And I know with every frozen breath that the Winter Ark is patient. It doesn't chase, it waits. It doesn't hunt, it remembers. And it is hungry. I shouldn't even be writing this. Whoever finds it, understand this. What I experienced in the Winter Ark is not weather, not storm, not any natural phenomenon you've ever studied. It is something older, something conscious, something that waits in the ice. The first sign was the silence. Not the soft, peaceful quiet of snowfall, but a thick, suffocating stillness that pressed against my eardrums. The snowcat, our only link to the outside world, coughed once and died. The engine's roar, which had been constant for hours, ended abruptly, leaving nothing. Only the wind, or what I thought was wind, scraping against the cabin. No, my companion whispered, though their face was hidden beneath frost-coated goggles. No, not now. I tried the starter. Click, click, nothing. The dashboard lights flickered and died, leaving us in a deep blue twilight. Outside, the world was a monochrome hell of ice and shadow. It didn't just absorb sound, it consumed it. We had come to study the Winter Ark, a bizarre atmospheric phenomenon, a shimmering aurora that supposedly warped weather patterns in a small, remote pocket of Alaska. The maps barely marked it, the locals wouldn't speak of it, and the project leads called it a career-making discovery, but nothing could prepare us for this. The storm came faster than we expected, turning visibility into zero, the snow whipping sideways like knives. We tied ourselves together with rope and stumbled through the frozen wasteland, the wind screaming in our ears. Time became meaningless. Shadows shifted where there should be none. And in the intervals between gusts, I began to hear it. A sound that was not snow, not wind, not ice cracking. Something alive, something hungry, moving in the white beyond our line of sight. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I could not tell. My fingers were frozen, my lungs burned, and every step felt like wading through molasses made of ice. My companions stumbled, nearly losing the rope. The snow was a living thing here, I realized. A predator that shifted under the weight of our boots, trying to pull us under. We found the supply cache by accident, a small reinforced cylinder buried in a drift. Inside, it was cold but quiet, and the silence was a fragile relief. A heater sputtered weakly to life, the warmth barely reaching our frostbitten limbs. That's when I noticed the walls. They were scratched. Deep gouges, frantic, as though something trapped had tried to claw its way out. And in one corner, a dark, frozen stain, brown-black, partially hidden under a crate. I pressed the radio. Static endless, then a crackling voice, fragmented and mad. "Don't come, station, it sees." The voice broke into screaming, high-pitched, unnatural. I dropped the receiver. My companion's hands were shaking. The heater died, plunging us into darkness. And then the scratching came. Not wind, not ice. Something deliberate, dragging along the hatch above us. Tap, tap, scrape. We froze. And then the whispers started. Soft at first, then rising in a chorus of cold voices. They weren't speaking to us, they were speaking through us. My own lips moved without consent, forming sounds that my mind could not understand. "Run," my companion finally said, voice trembling. "Whatever this is, it wants heat. It feeds on it." I didn't argue. I didn't think. When the hatch opened, the cold came in like a living thing. Shapes descended upon them, tall, slender, shifting forms made of ice and shadow. There was no scream, only soft, wet sounds of breaking and freezing. I scrambled out into the storm, running blind. I woke hours later, or was it days, inside the ruins of the Winter Ark station. The windows were shattered, doors ripped from their frames. No bodies remained, only stains and an all-consuming cold. No generator worked, no radio responded. Outside, the snow moved, shifting into impossible shapes. Shadows with too many limbs, frozen faces staring from beneath layers of ice. The Winter Ark is a cage. Every gust is alive. Every flake carries intent. I saw footprints in the snow that weren't ours, thin, clawed, impossibly long, and they appeared and disappeared as if the snow itself was swallowing them. The storm isn't random. It hunts. It remembers. I tried to follow the path we had come, hoping for a signal, for the faint glow of a distant town. The horizon shifted. Hills appeared where there were none. Ravines yawned beneath my boots. Shadows moved in the corner of my vision. When I turned, nothing was there, but the whispers remained, a chorus of cold voices calling my name. They know it. They know me. I found a second supply cache, or what I thought was a cache. Inside, the frost was alive, crawling over my gloves like 1,000 tiny fingers. I dropped the pack. The frozen walls groaned as though something immense pressed from the outside. I could hear ice cracking, snapping, as if 100 trapped creatures were attempting escape simultaneously. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs were numb. I fell into a hollow, buried beneath snow and ice. There in the darkness, I saw shapes. Tall, skeletal, and pale as the moon, they moved without sound. Eyes like black stones, staring, unblinking. And then I saw them. Faces frozen in masks of horror, all trapped in ice. My companion. Others from prior expeditions, all absorbed into the Winter Ark, now part of its hive mind. I ran again, emerging into a blizzard that was almost solid, the snow carving flesh, the wind slicing through bone. The landscape shifted impossibly, hills curling back on themselves, ice spikes erupting from the ground, and through it all, the whispers, urgent, angry, insatiable. They call me, they follow me, they want me. I reached the edge of the station, hoping for rescue, for life. But no helicopter came, no snowcat appeared. Only the snow, moving and writhing, forming shapes that clawed at the horizon. I am trapped. The Winter Ark surrounds me entirely. It does not sleep. It does not forgive. If you find this log, if it survives the ice, know this. The Winter Ark is alive. It sees. It hunts. It feeds. It remembers every warmth, every spark, every human thought that dared to trespass. And it will not stop. I am writing this now, frozen to the bone, the wind pressing against the walls of my makeshift shelter. Shapes gather outside. Shadows coil and writhe, scratching at the metal, shaping themselves into forms I cannot comprehend. The whispers are inside my head now, telling me things I cannot repeat. I do not know how long I have left. I do not know if I will see another sunrise, but the snow moves. It watches, and it is hungry. It is not a storm. It is the winter ark, and it will consume everything.